well, when you pass at your funeral, what would they say about you? And so you tell your players that, or you say, hey, what do you want people to remember about you when you played here or when you were in this situation? So I would like to think people would say, driven, had goals. He was someone competitive, but he also was, once you got to know him, he was easy to talk to. He would do anything for you. One of the things I try to do with every single text message of people that I have relationships with is call me if you ever need anything. And I mean that. If you need anything, call me and I'll do what I can to help you. And if I can't help you, I'll try to find someone who can. So I think that's one of the traits, is trying to help others become better at what they do. And I want people to think of me that way, whether I was coaching or not, that I was easy to talk to. And hopefully I'm somebody too that would listen to you. And I think that's one of the things I'm working on too. That's a little muckish thing, is there being a better listener.
What have you learned about, I think about the sort of a coming of age, and I think that sort of is restricted sometimes, or people only think that people are doing that when they're younger, right? But I
Right.
also think that, there's the old adage of, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And by all means, you're not old. You've got plenty of youth left in you. But it's the idea of someone who has done something for so long, the idea of reinventing themselves seems, like it seems impossible. You can't do it. When I'm constantly looking for the guys who are, sometimes they're forced to do it, but they sort of take that challenge head on and do reinvent themselves. I think there's the classic example of someone like a Tom Brady, right, who was world class in one area and has all these personal and professional challenges and still finds a way to sort of reinvent himself and become, I don't know if he's the best in his new sort of career, but at least he's sort of taken what made him great in one arena and found a way to apply it to another. And I see that not everybody makes that leap. A lot of people get stuck in their old identity and aren't really able to transition to whatever the next phase of life is.
Well, that's one of the great things about athletics. And I think it's important that they have athletics in college and have athletics in high school, because you learn teamwork. You learn how to sacrifice. You learn how to, there's discipline. You have to, there's structure. There's failure and success. I mean, depends. There's a lot of things about that are aligned and parallel, just life in general. And being in it for so long, I've got a really good understanding of failing, because I have failed and I've won. But at the end of the day, what do people think about you? Were you somebody that they looked up to? Did I set the example? Am I doing it now? I'm trying to do a lot of the same things as a coach when I was coaching, now as a speaker, wrote the book and just, being around other leaders. So a lot of those principles that I learned and that I exhibited on a day-to-day basis. And then going back to the young me and the older me, I mean, the last 10 years, I wish I could take those 10 years and move them back another 10 or 15 or 20, because I'm more patient now, see things differently. I'm not quick to judge. I mean, all of the things that we want to be, the experience now, the being older and seeing things, not getting upset so fast and just being a lot more calmer, a lot more steady. And so I talk to myself a lot. I do a self-talk a lot about those types of things. And I think it'll help me transition to the next job or next chapter of what I'm trying to do or what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about sort of these evolutions, if you will, is that you don't necessarily start from scratch. You sort of take at least the skills or the experiences that you've gained and bring those into the next sort of arena. And I think that that's important for men to sort of get clear on. I remember thinking, like, having these moments when my relationship was falling apart and, trying to hold it together as a dad and keep the business running. It's like, what worth do I have? It was literally like the sort of the questions that I was wrestling with. And I think it's important for guys to sort of remind them that those experiences, that the way in which we handle adversity is something that we can carry forward. And so even if it's just our response to challenges, that is something worth efforting for. I can imagine that being really hard for guys when they're making a big transition in life and changing, sort of their identity of who they thought they would be into something that, 'cause a lot of times they hadn't even considered, right? I remember for the first time for me, it was like having a kid. I thought that I would want to be a dad, but I'd never like seen or like put on that identity. I never sort of wore that identity. And to now sort of live in that, I think is a totally different experience for guys.
I mean, it's a day to day. It's a work in progress. It's trying to be good at what I want to do, just trying to be the best I can do, make the connections, talk to people. That keeps me motivated, keeps me fueled, keeps me focused. So there is some motivation there. And that's kind of how I've done things my whole life, though.